Everyone, I'm back again. I wanted to talk to you about Acts 3 and 4 of the Crucible, just to give you a little bit more of character background and of the events that happened, and to remind you, of course, that this is not necessarily a historical representation of what actually happened in the witch trials. Like, the same names are used and the same people were put to death, but all of the dialogue and, specifics were imagined. And in real life, of course, John and Abigail did not, in fact, have an affair. Miller added that for more drama and to give Abigail more of an ulterior motive for everything that she did. But in, getting ready to write your writing assignment, I wanted to make sure that you were clear on the directions. First of all, choose one character. So choose, Danforth, choose Abigail, choose John Proctor. So choose one character, choose 3 quotes that describe that character, and the quotes should be from different acts if possible. I think Danforth is only in 2 acts, so if you chose him or another character that was only in 2 acts, then 2 of your quotes would have to be from 1 act. But basically, you choose your quotes from different acts, and the idea is to show, different elements of your character. So, if you choose John Proctor, show one of him, in Act 1, talking to Abigail, being very secretive, one in Act 3, standing up to the court and telling the truth, and one in Act 4, when he, is willing to go off to death. And so just, different quotes, and make sure you're analyzing the words of the quote and talk about what they show about the character. Make sure you're meeting the length, right? The required length. And then finally, make sure you have a good substantial theme paragraph and connect it to the quotes you chose, right? So the 3 quotes that you chose should, in a way sort of add up to a possible theme of the play. And then also don't forget to connect your chosen possible theme to the idea of McCarthyism or the Red Scare, what was going on in the 50s and why Arthur Miller chose to write the play in the first place, right? So again, he's not interested in making a historical a historical reenactment of the witch trials. He's using the witch trials as a metaphor. We call it an allegory, to stand for, what he saw as a witch hunt basically going on in the 1950s, where people were being blacklisted, all of the stuff that you looked up before we started reading the play. People being blacklisted and losing their jobs and their livelihood and being suspected. And even if they weren't guilty, their lives sort of being ruined by, no one was necessarily put to death, but their lives were ruined and their livelihoods were taken from them because of Joseph McCarthy and the other members of the HUAC committee and their accusations and the really sort of negative feeling in the air at the time, almost again like a hysteria that, ended up ruining people's lives because of the great fear that people had of communism at the time. So just a little bit about each of the characters. Again, John Proctor, of course, is our hero, right? We see him, start out, again, being very sort of secretive and, having sinned in the past, having had this affair, broken trust of his wife. But, having come clean to his wife and told the truth and broken it off and told Abigail they'll never, be together again. And then we see him sort of evolve throughout the play. One thing people were a little bit confused about in Act 4 is when he says he's already, he feels like he's already going to hell. He's referring to the affair, that when he broke trust with his wife, that when he had the affair with Abigail, that was his big sin. And so he says, what does it matter if I lie now? If I can lie and save my life, I'm already going to hell. I'm not going to be saved. I'm not going to be redeemed. I've already broken trust. I'm not a good man. And so that's how he feels about himself, because of the affair with Abigail. And so he's harboring still all this guilt. And not only now at this point having, cheated on his wife with Abigail, but also having kept it a secret, which he feels has led to the arrests. And, at this point, it's gone past the point of no return. Danforth is not going to listen to any reason, because he says, well, we've already arrested so many people. We've put people to death already. We can't let people go now and say, oops, sorry, we were wrong, because, then we're going to look, like terrible hypocrites, and like, we don't know what we're doing. And so Danforth is really concerned with public perception. But Proctor, in the end, of course, is the hero, sticking to the truth, even though it means his own death. And in the end, when Elizabeth says he has his goodness now, she means that he stuck to the truth, even with the greatest, possible negative consequences. And we saw him being really concerned about his neighbors and friends when, he refused to sign his name to a document accusing them, and he refused to let them hang a document on the church because he didn't want to implicate his friends, because he knew they were as innocent as he was. And while he was willing to sully his own name, he wasn't willing to ruin theirs. Abigail, of course, throughout the whole thing is self-interested. She's doing it to, get either for revenge against Elizabeth or to try and get John to be hers, right? She wants Elizabeth to die so John will marry her. And so she has this really sort of negative motivation throughout. And so we can't trust her at all, and towards the end, even when she realizes, that John is never going to be with her, at that point, she's doing it to save her own skin, right? She can't go back on it and say she lied now, because she would be arrested and put to death, and it would look really badly for her. And so she has to sort of stick to her guns at that point. And then of course she runs away in the end, and we have her clearly being guilty, running away. You don't run away unless you're guilty, right? And so she, stole all of Paris's money and left and ran away. Now, Paris seems to change, right? In Act 4, he seems to be, working with Reverend Hale. He's trying to do good for people. He doesn't want them to die. But we find out that he has been threatened. Somebody, stuck a knife in his door. And so he's worried that because of his role in all of this, that his life is in danger. So is he working out of the goodness of his heart because he's realized, I've done terrible things and now I should make up for it? Or is he working because he wants, he feels he's scared and he's in danger, and Abigail's stolen all his money, and he's just, he's feeling very put upon, and so he's trying to protect himself. Let's see, who else? Elizabeth, of course, is good throughout. We do have her being sort of suspicious of John and a little bit unforgiving, in the beginning, but by the end, she's still sticking to the truth. She's still trying to do the best she can, and she, forgives John. It's implied. She never says she forgives him, because she says he has to forgive himself first before before he can be forgiven by other people. But I think we get the idea that she forgives him when she says he is a good man, and when she takes on part of the responsibility for the tension in their marriage, that she was, felt very plain and ordinary next to him, and so she maybe felt that she didn't deserve his love, and so she wasn't always the warmest wife. And so that's, she takes on a little bit, shares that responsibility. Let's see. Oh, Mary, of course, goes up and down, right? She seems to really want to tell the truth, but she's too afraid, right? And so in the end, her fear wins out, and she she succumbs to that fear, and goes back to Abigail and says, oh, don't hurt me, Abigail, anymore, right? And so her fear of Abigail seems to be greater than her fear of John, and so she's willing to throw him under the bus, basically, and in order to save her own life. They're attacking her, and so she moves that attack onto an easy target at that point. And Danforth, I think we see allied with authority throughout the whole thing, right? We see the first time we see him, he is described as reasonable, and he, sort of wants to get at the truth. But by the end of Act 4, he says, well, no, the court, you have to listen to the court no matter what, right? Even if it seems like the court might have made a mistake, you still have to, maintain your fidelity to the court, or else systems break down, right? He's worried about order. He's worried about a rebellion. He's worried about, society breaking down. And so for him, it's more important to stand up for society structure than it is to stand up for the truth. And that's his flaw, right? He's too blinded by, his love of order and structure to really admit when he's done something wrong, and really sort of be willing to open his eyes and see the truth in front of him. Reverend Hale, on the other hand, we can say, although he comes back in Act 4 and he says he's doing the devil's work, right? He's come to tell them to lie, right? Which lying is a sin. And so by telling them to lie, he is, basically advising them to sin, which is, something that your minister would normally not do, right? That would be considered, bad. And so that's why he says he's doing the devil's work. But of course, he feels a certain measure of responsibility for these people. He was so gung-ho at the beginning, and he was so enthusiastic about rooting out witches and finding out what was going on, that he was blinded a little bit, right, by his own sort of self-importance and his desire to show off, that he was sort of blind to the truth of the lies of these girls. And so he now is trying to make up for that by more lies. And, on the one hand, his motivation is to save people's lives and to try to undo the harm that he's already done. But on the other hand, he feels guilty about it, and he feels like he's doing, more evil because he's telling them to lie. And so in the very end, when we have, him and Elizabeth there, and John has died, has basically given up his life for the truth. Hale is just crushed, but Elizabeth says no, he has his goodness now, and so Hale feels guilty about John's death, the death of a good, honest man that he knows, he has some culpability for, but Elizabeth her faith in God is not shaken. Now, Hale. What else was I going to say about Hale? Oh, Hale, of course, in Act 3 is where we saw his big change when he denounced the court, right? He was sticking to the court. In Act 1, he was sure of the truth. In Act 2, he was saying, we have to trust the courts. If Rebecca Nurse is innocent, they'll never kill her, right? They'll never convict her because they're concerned with innocence as well. And then in the truth. And then in Act 3, he starts to realize the court isn't, necessarily concerned with hearing the truth. And then in Act 4, he comes back and is completely on the opposite side of the court. All right, am I missing anything? Let me check my notes. All right, Danforth, Abigail, Elizabeth, Proctor, Paris, Hale, Mary. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I went over all the main characters that you could choose for your writing assignments. As far as theme goes, a theme about truth, a theme about fear, a theme about hysteria, about totalitarianism, right? About the government having too much power. Any of those things, I think, are shown in the play, and you could connect any of them back to the idea of the Red Scare at McCarthyism. So just make sure you do all of those things. If you have questions, email me. Your writing assignment is due Thursday by 10 p.m., so you have all week pretty much to work on it. And then I do also want to make sure that you notice that the final unit for the year is going to be an independent reading assignment. I'm working on the actual, written part of the assignment right now, but you're going to read one of the 3 books that I posted, either The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which is a post-apocalyptic novel. We don't know what happened, why there was an apocalypse, but the air is full of ashes, and there's a scarcity of food, and, everything is dangerous, and it shows a man and his son as they travel. They're trying to reach the ocean because they think maybe once they get there, they'll find some safety. And so it shows them on their travels in a post-apocalyptic world and looks at their relationship. The other choices are We Were Liars, which was a summer reading book. So if you already read it for summer reading, I feel like maybe only 1 or 2 people actually read it already. And so if you already read that, you cannot choose it for this. You've already read it. And so you need to choose one of the other 2 books. But We Were Liars is about a girl. She's got some amnesia about what happened the previous summer. And so we see her sort of exploring what may have happened in her memories through emails and letters and thoughts. And eventually, in the end, we find out what exactly happened. It's a good mystery if you like mysteries. It's a good story about friendship and doing the right thing and trusting people and family. And then the final choice is a book called The Hate You Give, which you may have heard of the movie that was made. So you can have the option to read the book. The thing about that book is you do have to buy it. The other 2 are free, available online. This one you have to purchase. So if you want to read that one, you do have to, I would order it now from Amazon so you can start reading it, or you can get it on a Kindle or, a Nook. You can buy it from both of those places and get an e-version as well, which of course is instant, so you could get that right away. And if you wanted to check in with your local library, they're not doing, real books right now, but they are doing ebooks, so you can see if it's available there. It might be long enough. It might have been out for long enough that, there's not as much of a back order, or it might still be real popular and maybe there is still a back order, so you never know. But if you wanted to read that one, you will have to buy it or find a way to borrow it. So make sure you start reading that. The first written assignment is going to be due next Monday. And so I'm going to post it before the end of the week. So your essay will be due Thursday, and then you'll have to read a good chunk of your book and do a writing assignment for Monday. And so you might want to get it as soon as possible and start reading it as soon as possible. Online, the way they've set it up, the books look like they're actually shorter than they are, but they're all about 200 to 300 page novels. And so you're going to be reading about 50 pages at a pop. Online, it looks shorter because they've compressed all of the documents into a PDF file, like a Word document, and it's like single spaced. And so, one page of that would probably be, 3 book pages. And so every time you read, 10 pages of that, you're really reading like 30 pages of a novel because more words fit on a page like that. So just to give you that heads up. So get a book, start reading it, be ready to submit a writing assignment on Monday. I'm going to try and get exactly what that writing assignment is going to be up by Wednesday. So check back Wednesday if you want to see what that is. And then your essay, your 3-quote explanation and paragraph theme explanation connected to the quotes, that's due on Thursday. Make sure you look at the rubric, right? So the rubric has all of the things I'm going to be looking for when I'm grading it. And so if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope that this was helpful. Bye-bye.